This is a collection of 100 Jurassic World figures, and I'm going to be showing you all of them today. Let's get started with this giant Spinosaurus figure. This specific figure is actually from the Legacy collection, and they don't make this one anymore, so it's pretty hard to find. It's got the dark green coloring, different than all the other Spinosaurus figures, and of course the jaw-chomping button. Next, we've got a big Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. I believe this one is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got a light brown body, its arms, its legs, its tail, and its head are adjustable, and there's a button for chomping. Next up, we've got another T-Rex figure. This one's pretty similar to the one that we just saw, except it's got some slightly darker coloring, darker brown on the top, and of course the jaw-chomping button. Over here is an herbivore dinosaur. This is the Pentaceratops. It's got a huge variety of horns on its head and on its frill as well. And it's got two action buttons, one to move the head up and down, and one to swing the torso back and forth. Moving right along here, we've got the Sound Surge Carnotaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. Let's check out these sound effects. Up next is a figure that I bought pretty recently, actually. This is the Hammond Collection Concavinator. Check out that really cool coloring with the orange fading into the brown and the blue, and the orange and red stripes along the top. Up in front here, we've got another giant T-Rex figure. This one is a bright orange color, and it has the same movements and actions as the T-Rexes that we saw earlier. This is an Indominus Rex figure, but it's actually not made by Hasbro. It's made by a model company, so it looks a lot different, and it has a lot more detail than many of the Hasbro figures. I love those little spikes running along its back and on the top of its head. Right next to that, we've got a weird looking dinosaur. This is the Sarcosuchus. It's got a super short and super long body. It's got some really cool spikes that run all the way down its back to its tail. And you can use the tail to control the head and chomp the jaw too. This next one is an Tyrannosaurus from Hasbro. I believe this is an herbivore dinosaur. Definitely doesn't look like a scary predator. And it's got some cool coloring on its body. Plus an action button right on the side to move its head up and down. I've got a super bright dinosaur in here. This is a Triceratops. It looks a lot less realistic than many of my other figures, but it's still pretty cool. It's got some red on the top and the blue. Kind of looks like a baby Triceratops. Way in the back here, we've got another Indominus Rex figure, but this one looks quite a bit different. It's got really short legs and a giant head. This is from the Rowdy Roars collection, and it actually has a few different actions. You can get it to shut its mouth, and you can use the tail to hold the head up. Way in the back here, we've got a Cryolophosaurus figure with the dark blue and orange coloring. And this figure comes with sound effects that happen when you move its tail around. Up next, let's go with this Ceratosaurus figure in the dark green and black coloring. And it's got a slide lever action at the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This right here is the Jurassic World Dominion Triceratops figure. It's got some unique coloring with the orange in the front, right next to the dark green, and then some lighter green along the back of its body. Plus, it has a roaring action when you press down on its back. Ooh, check it out. Here is a Tyrannosaurus figure. This has some bright red and some soft blue coloring. Of course, it's got the huge claws on its hands, and it has a really long neck and a bunch of small teeth in its mouth too. Over here, we've got a few flying dinosaurs. These are smaller figures. I believe that both of these are Pteranodon figures. This first one's got some cool reflective gold coloring on its head. The rest of its body is like a dark green color. And this second one is more of a grayish color. It still has some yellow on its face, but this one actually has a button on its back to flap its wings. Looks like we've got another big dinosaur in here. This one looks quite a bit different. It's still made by Hasbro, but it's a different toy line than the rest. But check it out, it still has a chomping action when you press down on its body. Looks like we've got yet another T-Rex in here. This one is the dark green with black detailing along the top. and is one of my personal favorites. Its limbs are adjustable just like the other T-Rexes, and it has the jaw-chomping action. Check it out, here is the second Tyrannosaurus of the collection, and this one is made by Hasbro for the Jurassic World Dominion series. It's got a bunch of cool feather texturing all over its body with the red stripe, and it has a jaw-chomping action that you can activate by pressing the button on its tail. Oh, look at this, way down here, we've got a Lego collection. This might be a Carnotaurus, I think, because it's got those two huge horns at the top of its head. It's got some pretty crazy coloring overall though. It's got bright blue, some neon orange. Check out those yellow eyes too. Here's another Pteranodon figure, but it is way larger than the ones that we saw earlier. You can unfold its wings to show the full wingspan and check out the detailing along its body, which is pretty neat. And it's got two action buttons on its back, one for the jaw and one for flapping its wings. I've got another big Lego dinosaur in here. This one might be a Baryonyx, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments below what dinosaur species you think this is. In the back here, we've got a good old Ankylosaurus figure. This one has the blue top with the spikes all over the top and the sides, and a slide lever action to swing its tail around. Here is a Dilophosaurus figure. This is a basic series Dilophosaurus, so there's no action button, but it's still got some ginormous frills in the front with a huge yellow crown and a dark red body with adjustable limbs. Looks like I've got some Velociraptor figures in here as well. Let's check out these three. This first one is an extreme battle damage Velociraptor from Jurassic World Dominion. Check that out, you can turn it on and off. There's also the Velociraptor blue figure with opposable legs, arms, and mouth. And there's this crazy looking Velociraptor that has some really cool detailing along its back. Plus, it's got some golden eyes too. Up next, we've got the Majingasaurus. This figure is a little bit bigger than the Velociraptor figures, and it's got some yellow, blue, and green on its body. Plus, you can use the tail to move the head around. In the back here, we've got what looks like a Brachiosaurus figure with dark red and some yellow detailing along with the black too. Check out those green eyes. I found another Velociraptor figure. This is an older figure. It's got the tan with the green striping, but unfortunately there is no action button on this figurine. Here's another Velociraptor figure from the same era. This one has the dark green with black stripes on the top and the yellow underbelly. But once again, sadly, there is no action button on this figure. Check out this weird looking dinosaur. This figure is designed to hang on to your finger, and it actually is battery powered with sound effects and with movement. Over here, we've got the Sauropelta with the light green and dark green coloring. Here is the Zuniceratops figure with the yellow and gray coloring. It's got the two huge horns on its head. There's also a few Pachycephalosaurus figures in here. This one has battle damage on the side that you can open and close. And the other Pachycephalosaurus actually has a headbutting action when you move its tail. Here's another winged figure. This is a Dimorphodon. It's got the fiery red and orange coloring on the underside of its wings and the dark green along the top. Oh, look at that. There's actually another Sauropelta figure right here. This one has the brown and clay red coloring. Next up is a small figure. This is a Gallimimus, although it's got some pretty detailed coloring running along its back all the way to its head. Here's a Stygimoloch figure. It's got a hard head just like the Pachycephalosaurus, but it's also got some spikes coming out right behind it. And on this figure, you can use the tail for the headbutting action too. Oh, right over here, we've got an Atrociraptor figure. This one is tan, and it is in the stealth pose. You can see it's crawling along the ground. This one looks to be like a Kentrosaurus figure. This one was not made by Hasbro, so it looks quite a bit different, but it's still got those iconic horns coming right outside of the shoulders. Up next is a miniature Dilophosaurus figure. Check out that super bright and colorful frills. Now here's a teeny tiny dinosaur figure. This is from the Snap Squads. And this is a Triceratops figure. Look at that, it's even got teeth on the inside. That's a nice little detail. And the last figure in this first bin is the Elaphrosaurus figure. I think this one's pretty recent, came out in 2023. Let's dive into our second bin of dinosaur figures right here, but before we do, let's check out these officially licensed Jurassic World Heroes of Goo-Jitsu figures. This first one is a Mosasaurus figure. It's got a chomp attack action. It looks like it has fish on the inside or something like that from that picture. So let's open it up and check it out. Here we go, and wow, this thing is extremely squishy and stretchy. It also comes with that chomping action, so you can snap its jaw shut, just like that. But the biggest feature of this is its gooey body. Super squishy, it's still got the texture like a normal Mosasaurus, and it's got its fins as well. But when you squeeze it, let's see what's on the inside of it. All right, there is fish bones in there. That is super crazy looking. Wow, they're just floating in all that goo. It's pretty relaxing to squeeze, actually. That's really cool that they actually put something inside the goo, so you can only see it when you expand it. The other Goo-Jitsu figure that I got for Jurassic World is this Pyroraptor. It also has the chomp attack action, and instead of having goo on the inside, this one is super stretchy. So let's open it up and see. Oh yeah, this one feels totally different from the Mosasaurus. It's actually like pretty hard. You can squeeze it and it moves, but it doesn't have the goo on the inside like the other figure does. You can open and close its mouth for that jaw chomping action. And this one has some feather texturing on its body as well. It has some huge feathers on its arms. Now this figure is supposed to stretch really far, so let's see if we can stretch it. Oh, look at that. There are some different things on the inside of even this figure. Wow, that is super stretchy. It's really strong and hard to stretch. Let's see if we can find out what is that. It looks like feathers are on the inside of this figure. All right, let's get back to our regular figures. I've got an Albertosaurus figure right here, with the green and the orange striping on the side. It also has a chomp button on its tail too. Here is the Sound Surge Indominus Rex figure. It's got the classic gray coloring with a little bit of brown and the spikes all over its body, and of course some really cool sound effects. Here's a pretty new figure. This is the Siamosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It stands on all four legs. It has some pretty cool paint detailing on its body. It's got a huge spine just like a Spinosaurus, and a jaw-chomping action by pressing the button on its tail. Back here is a Carnotaurus figure with a dark brown and black coloring. It's got a little bit of battle damage right on its nose, and it has posable legs, arms, and a tail, and you can use the tail to move the head around too. Check it out, here is the Hammond Collection Triceratops figure. This one is way more posable than the standard figures, and I think this one looks a bit more lifelike because of how detailed it is. Look at all that wear and tear on its horns. That's really cool. This is the Tarbosaurus figure. It's got a mostly dark body. It has some black striping along its back, and the brightest part is its neck and its chin. It's also got these really cool huge spines that run all the way down its tail, and of course a button on its tail for the chomping action. Up next is the Carcharodontosaurus figure. This figure too has some spikes running down its back to its tail, and it also has an action button for the chomping action too. Plus, all of its limbs are posable too. From Jurassic World Dominion, this is the Rajasaurus figure. It's a bit smaller than some of the other Predator figures, but it has a really cool chomping action when you press down on its body. This is an aquatic dinosaur. I believe it's called the Kronosaurus. It's got some huge teeth in its mouth, as well as some teeny tiny ones. And it has an action button on its back, so you can swing its head back and forth. Over here, we've got another Carnotaurus figure. This one looks quite a bit different though. It's a lot more bright in color. Its spikes on its back are this gold color. The horns are also a bright color too. And it has this really big action button on its back for chomping. Way back here is an herbivore. This is the Sinoceratops with the light green and the bright yellow coloring. And this figure has a roaring action when you press down on its body. Oh, look at this. This is actually another Sinoceratops figure, but this one is in the gray and tan coloring. And instead of just a simple roaring action, it actually has a tail that moves the head around with sound effects. Here is the Parasaurolophus figure. It's mostly yellow, it's got some brown striping with 2 action buttons. One controls the head, moves it up and down, and the other button controls its tail. Check it out, we've got another Lego Jurassic World figure. This one, I believe, is a Brachiosaurus figure because it's got a huge body that walks on all 4 legs, and it's got this really long and flexible neck. Pretty cool, it's got some cool slash detailing on its body, and is pretty large for a Lego figure. Next up is the Metriocanthosaurus figure in the yellow and green color. Let's check out that chomp action. Back here is a model T-Rex figure. Looks like it's an orange color. It's got some really cool muscle detailing all over its body. And here's another Lego figure. This one though is a T-Rex. Check that out. It's a dark brown color. It has some darker brown detailing all over its body, and you can even open and close its jaw. This next figure is not a dinosaur. It is actually a human inside one of those balls from the Jurassic World movie that you can drive around in. It's pretty cool. This is a baby Brachiosaurus figure with the gray and purple-ish color on the top. Let's check out these Stegosauruses next. I've actually got quite a few in here. This first one is a newer one. It's got the brown, green, and clay red coloring, and it has the action when you press down on its spine, it swings its tail back and forth. Down here somewhere, oh here it is the baby version of that Stegosaurus. It's got the same type of coloring with the green and the clay red on the top, but it is a whole lot smaller. Look at that, even its tail is really small. Let's see what other Stegosaurus is. Here's one. This Stegosaurus is brown, it's got some tan and green, and this one has 2 action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second button does the classic tail swinging action. And we've got another Triceratops in here. This one is in a gray and darker gray color. It's got the light pink underbelly. And of course, the tail slashing action. Oh, look at that. I've actually got another one with identical coloring in here. So this one is actually just a twin. Here's another large dinosaur. This one's actually really cool. This is a Velociraptor beta figure. And it's pretty cool because it has some lifelike movements. You can have it walk side to side like this, and you can even have it chomp by pressing down on its body. I've got another Ankylosaurus figure in here. This one has the gray, green, and brown coloring, plus a button for the tail swinging action. I see a few Baryonyx figures in here. This first one, I believe, is Baryonyx Grim or Limbo, maybe? I actually can't remember their name. It's got the bright green coloring and the action button on the top for chomping its jaw. Here is the second Baryonyx figure in here with totally different coloring. I love the bright blue coloring along the top of its head and the slide lever action for the roaring and sound effects. And the third Baryonyx is right here. It's got battle damage on its neck and on its leg, and of course it has a button for the chomping action. Looks like I've got a few Ceratosaurus figures in here as well. This first one I think is from Camp Cretaceous. It's got the iconic red coloring running all the way up to its head with the slide lever action for roaring and sound effects. And this other Ceratosaurus is actually a Hammond collection figure. It's got some pretty similar coloring to the Ceratosaurus we just saw, but its limbs are way more posable, and I think there's a bit more texturing on its skin too. Hidden in the bottom here is another Carnotaurus figure. This one is from the Fallen Kingdom collection, so it's actually a bit older than a lot of these other figures. And it's got the button on its back for the chomping action. Let's see, what's next? Let's go with this Allosaurus figure. We haven't seen that many Allosauruses in this collection, but this one is probably one of my favorites because of its color. Plus, it's got those little spikes on the top of its head that run down its back, and of course, a slide lever action for roaring with sound effects. Here's another ginormous winged dinosaur. I believe it's actually another Pteranodon figure. Once its wings are opened up, you can see that there are 2 buttons, one for its mouth and one to flap the wings. This next figure is the Rowdy Roars Atrociraptor. Let's press that button on the top of its head. Oh, you know what? Here's another Atrociraptor figure, and I got this one pretty recently too. It has some really cool bright red coloring along its arms and on its shoulders, and it's got this interesting backpack tracker system on it too. Down at the bottom here, here's another one of those figures that fit on your finger. But just like that, they rest on your finger, and they have sound effects and movement too. Look at that, even its eyes blink. This next figure is a classic Triceratops figure. It's got some bright red coloring though, which is a cool feature. I've also got another Stegosaurus in here. It's got some pretty realistic coloring and some bright spines. Here is a very small Parasaurolophus figure. It's got some cool brown coloring with some lighter brown on the sides, and it looks like it has some tiny yellow eyes. This next figure down here, I believe, is called a Protoceratops. This is a pretty weird looking dinosaur. It's got some bright coloring all over its body too. Up next, I think I've got a couple Herrerasaurus figures. This first figure is a battle damage one that you can open and close right on the side. And this other figure is not a battle damage edition, but it has some gray and white detailing. I've also got a bright Monolophosaurus figure right here, and it has a chomping action that's activated by moving the tail. This one's pretty cool. This is actually a Dilophosaurus without the frills, which, as it turns out, may be fictional from the Jurassic Park movie. I've got a few more Velociraptor figures in here. This first one looks a lot like Velociraptor Blue, but it's not made by Hasbro. It's still got the iconic blue stripe running down its side. And there's also this similar looking Velociraptor. It's got some white with some black spots on its body and a little bit of red along the top of its head. And this one is made by Mattel. It features some bright red coloring with purple stripes running down the sides. All right, only a few left. This one, I'm actually not sure what it is, but it looks like it's holding an egg. Maybe it's stealing it. Comment below if you recognize this dinosaur species. Here's a crazy looking dinosaur that walks on all four legs. It looks kind of like a Sarcosuchus, but I'm actually not sure. And this figure is really feathered. Check out all that feather design on its tail and on its arms and its back. And it's got a pretty wild looking head too.
Today, we're gonna be taking all of my Jurassic World Dominion figures and we're gonna be putting them from biggest over here all the way to smallest down here. This figure right here is the largest Dominion figure that I have. This is the Dreadnoughtus figure, and it is super long. It's probably 3 or 4 feet in length, but it still has some really cool features. You can even open and close the mouth and twist the head around too. So let's put this dinosaur on the very far left as the biggest dinosaur. Let's see, what super colossal figure is next? It's a tough call, but I think the Giganotosaurus might be the next largest. This figure is huge, has a classic green coloring, the awesome super sharp spine, and the really cool teeth. These are pretty unique. Let's set this super colossal Giganotosaurus down right next to the Dreadnoughtus figure. These are our 2 largest figures. Next up has got to be our super colossal T-Rex with the new brown and black coloring. You won't see this on older Jurassic World figurines. This one is super cool. Let's put this right next to our giant Giganotosaurus figure. Next is this awesome Atrociraptor figure. This one is the white with 2 different tones of brown striping along its back and sides. And unlike the other super colossal figures we've seen so far, the teeth are actually fully inside the mouth compared to the other figures we've seen so far where the teeth are on kind of like the outside of the mouth. All right, there we go. Let's move on to the next biggest, which is this tall Brachiosaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. Let me stand it up. Now this dinosaur is a lot taller than these other dinosaurs right here, but its body is a bit smaller and it's just shorter in size overall, so that's why I'm putting it over here. But it's got some pretty cool detailing, the blue coloring around its head. And next up in size is this giant Apatosaurus figure. Check out the size difference between this one and the Brachiosaurus over here. It's a little bit shorter, it's still standing on all 4 legs, and it has a really long neck, but instead of going up super tall like that one, this one kind of sticks out forwards more. All right, now we're moving on to our slightly smaller figurines. We're gonna start with this T-Rex, which has the identical coloring as the super colossal figure right over there. This is a really cool T-Rex. I like the features on this one, and this one has a ginormous head compared to older Jurassic World T-Rexes. Right over here, we've got the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. This one has some really cool orange-brown coloring. It has a lot more detail than many of the other Jurassic World T-Rexes. It even has marbled eyes. Check out all that texture. And these figures are super posable too, which is an awesome feature. Next, we've got this Thrashing Giganotosaurus figure in the same coloring as the super colossal figure over here. They look pretty similar. This one's quite a bit smaller, although it's still probably around a foot in length from tail to head. So let's set this down right next to the T-Rex figure. All right, what do we go with next here? I think next is this Allosaurus figure. This figure is a little bit smaller than the T-Rexes and the Giganotosaurus figure here, but it is a lot larger than a lot of my other Allosaurus figures. Plus, it has a battle damage feature right on its side that you can open and close. Let's get this standing right next to the Giganotosaurus. The next up in size is the Tyrannosaurus figurine, which was really cool in the Dominion movie. So we're gonna set this down right next to the Allosaurus figure. And check out those huge claws on its hand and the really long neck with the big face at the very top. We've got another herbivore dinosaur next in size here. This is the Stegosaurus with some pretty cool coloring. It's got the brown, some lighter tan, green, and then the clay red at the very top. All right, let's set it down next to the Tyrannosaurus. Look at those spikes. They're a little bit taller than the Tyrannosaurus, although if this was standing up all the way, it would definitely be a lot taller. Here is the Yangchuanosaurus figure. This, I don't think, was in the new Jurassic World Dominion movie, but it came out as part of the toy line. It's got some really cool coloring. It's got an action that lets you move the neck around in a lifelike way. And you know what? I think it is actually a little bit bigger than the Stegosaurus. So let's shift the Stegosaurus over and put this dinosaur right there. Next is a really interesting looking dinosaur. This is the Ankylosaurus. It's got the clay red coloring with the brown top, a super long neck, and it stands on 4 legs. Let's put this right next to the Stegosaurus figure. I can't quite tell which one is the next largest, but I'm gonna go with the Rajasaurus figure in the blue and gray coloring. And it's got that cool little spike right at the top of its head. Now let's set it right next to the Ankylosaurus. Let's see if it stands up. I think its legs are kind of broken, so that'll have to do. Here is the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus figure. Once again, it has pretty similar coloring as the super colossal figure right here, and this one comes with sound effects as well. It's pretty cool, so let's set this right next to the Rajasaurus figure. The next in size, I think, is this Pyroraptor figurine. This is the basic edition, but it still has the cool fiery red coloring and the black on its tail, on its legs, and a little bit on its head too. Let's set them down right here. And very close in size to the Pyroraptor is this basic Atrociraptor figure in the same coloring as the super colossal figure that we have back here. So let's go down all the way to the end and set them on the table. All right, now the figures are getting a little bit smaller. I think next up is the Megaraptor figure in the bright red and blue and a little bit of tan right along its face. And this figure is cool because it actually has an action when you press down on its back. It has a chomping action. Here is, I believe it's pronounced the Dryptosaurus. And a cool new feature that Mattel is putting on these toys is this little slide. It's like a thing that swings back and forth, and it actually swings their head back and forth and opens their mouth too, which is pretty cool. Now let's set it down right next to the Megaraptor. Next is the Hammond Collection Baryonyx figure. This one comes in the gray dark blue with the yellow striping. And like all the Hammond Collection figures, is super posable and really cool. Let's put this down right at the end. Here we've got another Hammond Collection figurine. This is the Parasaurolophus. It's got some pretty bright coloring and of course is super posable and adjustable as well. Next is the bright Ichthyovenator. It looks kind of like a Spinosaurus because it has the big spine on its back and a long and narrow snout, but it has a super bright and much larger tail and is a lot smaller than a Spinosaurus, I think. So let's go ahead and put this down right next to the Parasaurolophus. Here we've got a huge Sinoceratops figurine with some bright yellow coloring around its all black eyes and the yellow coloring right on its tail as well. And like many of these other figures, it has the action that when you press down on its back, it lifts up its head. Let's see, next up in size is this Triceratops figure in the green and brown coloring. Let's put this at the very end. Oh, you know what? It looks like we're out of space at the very end though. So let's create a new row in the front, right up here. We've got another Triceratops figure next, but this one is from the Hammond Collection. So compared to this other Triceratops figure right here, you can see that this one has a lot more detailing and differencing in the color, because this one basically has two different colors. This one kind of fades into all sorts of other different colors. And of course, is a lot more posable as well. Next up is the Iguanodon figurine in the tan and darker brown on top with the striping. Let's set down this Iguanodon right next to the Triceratops. Now we're down to the really small ones. So let's start with this brand new one that I bought. This is the Geniodectes Cirrus dinosaur. All right, this dinosaur is pretty brightly colored. It's got a dark gray body, but then it has this super bright coloring along its leg, its neck, its face, and the super bright red on top. And this is the Extreme Battle Damage edition, so you can click it open and closed with that button on the top. All right, let's put this Geniodectes down right next to the Iguanodon. We've got a few more Extreme Battle Damage dinosaurs right here that are the same size. This first one is a Velociraptor, and I've also gotten a Troceraptor figure. And they both have that button on the top that activates the battle damage on both sides of its body. Let's set these down next in line. I've got a couple more Troceraptor figures right here. These are the non-battle damage versions. I've got an orange one with the tan striping, and then of course the white with brown striping, just like the giant super colossal version. Let's get this first Troceraptor down, and the second one. Here is another Pyroraptor. This is a pretty small figure, and this one actually has the extreme battle damage on the side as well. Check that out, it's pretty cool. It's got the same classic red and black coloring along its body. And let's set it down right next to the white Troceraptor. This next figure I believe is called the Moros Intrepidus. It's got some pretty unique green and orange coloring. It's got the light green eyes, some pretty cool feathering and detailing all over its body. And let's set it down as the next smallest dinosaur. All right, now we're getting down to the real small dinosaurs. These are both Dimetrodons, and their spines make them look really tall, but actually their bodies are really short. This first brown Dimetrodon is a normal one, doesn't have any special features, so we'll put that next in line. But this other Dimetrodon actually has battle damage on the side, like many of these other small figures, which is pretty cool. So let's set that down right there. And here are our last two dinosaurs. We've got a Miragaia dinosaur with the huge spikes on the side, and we've also got a Therizinosaurus figure, which is really small, but still has the giant claws and the classic coloring. All right, let's set these down. Looks like we have just enough space.
going to be checking out some of Jurassic World's most popular dinosaur figures, and we're going to be standing them side by side from biggest to smallest right over here. And we're going to get started with the largest ones, the first of which is this giant Indominus Rex figure. This figure is probably almost 2 feet from the tip of its nose to its tail, and it stands over a foot tall, and it's got huge arms compared to T-Rex figures, and it's got some awesome detailing along the back as well. Let's put this one right on the far corner. The next biggest figure in this collection is this Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. This figure is a little bit bigger than a lot of my other T-Rex figures, and it has a ton more detailing on its body. Plus, they made this figure way more adjustable. It has 3 points of articulation in its torso and its neck, 2 points of articulation in its tail, can even bend the elbows, and it's just really cool and realistic looking. So let's put this next to the Indominus Rex figure. Let's see, next up is probably this Jurassic World Dominion Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. It looks a lot different compared to the Hammond Collection. It's a lot darker. This one has marbled eyes. This one has painted yellow eyes. And on this T-Rex figure, its head is ginormous compared to a lot of the other T-Rex figures. And of course, it's got an action button on its tail for the chomping and roaring too. Let's put this right next in line. See, now the Hammond Collection T-Rex is a bit bigger than this normal Dominion T-Rex in terms of height, but this one does have a much larger head, as you can see. All right, what's next? I think this giant Giganotosaurus figure is the next biggest figure. And this Giganotosaurus has 2 main action buttons. The first swivels its entire torso back and forth, complete with sound effects, and the second button underneath its tail opens and closes its jaw. You know, I think this Giganotosaurus is actually bigger than this T-Rex right here, so let's have them switch places. Next up, let's see, I think it's this T-Rex that is the next largest. I believe this is a Camp Cretaceous Tyrannosaurus Rex, and is one of my favorite because of how you can move its neck and its head around to look super lifelike. And this one is definitely a little bit smaller than the Dominion T-Rex, so I think they'll go side by side. Here we've got a big Spinosaurus figure, and in real life, the Spinosaurus is actually the largest carnivore, but in terms of the figure, it's actually a bit smaller than some of these other figures right here. And this figure is actually the Legacy Collection Spinosaurus, so this one's actually pretty hard to find nowadays. And although the spine is a little bit taller than that T-Rex, they're generally around the same size, so we're just gonna put this Spinosaurus right here. Right over here, we've still got another T-Rex figure. This is a Legacy Collection Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it is one of the few T-Rexes that I have that is in this really cool camo green color. This one is definitely a little bit smaller than this Spinosaurus right there. Now we're getting down to a little bit smaller figures. I think the next biggest size is the Tyrannosaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. This figure has some huge claws, and I think this dinosaur might have the biggest claws out of any dinosaur that I've seen. But interestingly, it is a herbivore dinosaur. And we're gonna set it down right next to the Legacy Collection T-Rex. The next biggest dinosaur in this collection is the Scorpius Rex, which I'm sure you recognize from Camp Cretaceous Season 3. This figure has 2 action buttons. The first is for its jaws and sound effects, and the second is the claw slashing action. It's really cool, and a little bit smaller than the Tyrannosaurus figure. We're gonna put it down right beside it. Actually, now that they're side by side, I think the Scorpius Rex is a little bigger, so let's have them swap places. All right, next biggest is probably this Carnotaurus figure. I think this is an older Carnotaurus, might be from the Fallen Kingdom collection. It has a jaw snapping action right on its back. Let's put this right next to the Tyrannosaurus. Next up, in terms of the tallest dinosaur, I think is probably this Albertosaurus figure. I actually have a battle damage edition of the Albertosaurus, but this one is just the normal one, and you can use its tail to twist its neck around and open and close its jaw. Since we're running out of room on the edge of the table over there, we're gonna start a new row right up front here. Next up is the Pyroraptor figure. This is the basic Pyroraptor from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the same awesome coloring, but pretty limited in terms of its movement. Here we've got another Scorpius Rex figure from the Camp Cretaceous collection. This one is actually a lighter green than the other Scorpius Rex. You can see that that one's like mostly black, but this one's got a lighter green on the sides. This figure is a bit smaller than the other Scorpius Rex. And now this Scorpius Rex actually looks a bit bigger than this Pyroraptor figure, so we're gonna have them switch places. Next up is another Giganotosaurus figure. This is the Sound Surge Giganotosaurus. As I'm sure you can hear right now, it is a whole lot smaller than this Giganotosaurus figure right here, and a little bit smaller than this Pyroraptor figure. And put them right beside each other. Let's see now. Next up, let's go with this Stegosaurus. This is a Jurassic World Dominion Stegosaurus, and I am loving the new color design on this. And with those huge spines on the top, it's a little bit taller than these other dinosaurs, but in terms of size, I'd say it's pretty close. So we're gonna put it right there for now. Right over here, next up in size, is the Ichthyovenator dinosaur from Jurassic World. This is a super bright dinosaur, and we're gonna set it down right next to the Stegosaurus figure. Here is a classic Baryonyx figure with the button on its back to activate its jaw. So why don't we put this dinosaur down as the next in line of the biggest. Over here, we've got the Hammond Collection Triceratops, and this also is quite a new figure that I bought recently. I am loving the texture and design of this, although the coloring is a bit plain, I would say. Let's put this down right next to the Baryonyx figure. For the next up in size, why don't we go with this new Jurassic World Dominion Triceratops figure. Let's open it up. So this figure has a lot of the classic camo green coloring, and it's got some clay red brown coloring along the top. So let's set this down right next to the Hammond Collection Triceratops. For the next up in size, let's go with this new one that I just bought, the Jurassic World Dino Trackers Tyrannosaurus figure. Let's get this opened up. All right, here is the new figure. It's obviously an aquatic dinosaur. I think this one came out very recently. And it has a button on its back so you can twist its head back and forth and even open and close its mouth too. Let's set this down right next to the Triceratops. Just a few left. Next up in size is this Ankylosaurus figure with the clay red and brown coloring and tons of spikes on its body. Plus, when you press down on its back, it swings its tail back and forth. This figure right here is an extreme battle damage Velociraptor. You can actually turn the battle damage on and off just with the click of a button. I've also got an extreme battle damage Pyroraptor figure with the same feature on its side. You can click the damage on and off. And let's set that down right next to the raptor figure. All right, here are our last three. This is an extreme battle damage Dimetrodon figure with that same click action battle damage on both sides. This is also a super bright dinosaur. And we're actually gonna set this down right in front of them in the very front row. And here is what might be the smallest Tyrannosaurus figure by Jurassic World that they've made. I'm actually not sure, but this figure is teeny tiny. Let's put this right next to the Dimetrodon. And last of all, we've got the Jurassic World Dominion Wow Pods Dilophosaurus figure. Let's get this opened up and let's check it out. Here it is out of the box, so you can see the whole Dilophosaurus face and the frills, and it's actually battery operated. So there's a motion sensor up here that'll turn on these lights, and it might be a bit too bright in here to actually see it, but it kind of changes the color of the Dilophosaurus. And the cool thing about these is that when you get more of these Wow Pods, you can actually stack them on top of each other and arrange your own way to display them. So we're gonna set this down right in the corner next to the Tyrannosaurus figure.
Welcome back to the Amazing Dinosaurs channel. Today we're checking out not just one, but two bins of Jurassic World figures. There are 100 Jurassic World figures in here. Let's get started with this bin on the right. First up is this hybrid Indominus Rex figure. Even got sound effects too. Plus, there's spikes that come out on its back too. This is an extreme battle damage orange Tyrannosaurus Rex. It's got the battle damage all over its body, and there's an action at the top of its head to activate the jaw. Next up is the Stomp and Escape T-Rex. This T-Rex has a button on its back for the jaws, and you can use the tail for a stomping action. Here's another Indominus Rex figure. This one has a rubber neck while the rest of its body is a hard plastic, and you can use the arms to open and close the jaws. Over here, we've got a Terran T-Rex. This T-Rex is pretty cool because it has a button that activates the tearing action with its mouth. Look at that. That's pretty intense. And there's another button on its back to activate the tail. Over here, we've got a really cool Spinosaurus figure. This figure is pretty big, and it's got some awesome coloring and detailing all over its body. And like many of the other large figures, it has a button on the top of its head to activate the jaw. This, I believe, is called the Ciats Microrarum. It's got an orange and blue body with some gray detailing as well. It's got tons of spikes on its head, and you can use the tail to control the mouth and the neck. This is an orange Velociraptor. It's a pretty basic figure, so you can only move the arms, the legs, and the tail, but it's pretty large and still pretty cool. Here is a huge Allosaurus figure. This has the classic coloring for many of the Allosaurus figures, and best of all, it's got battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. This is a T-Rex figure, but with some cool coloring. It's got the red and the black spots all over its body, and the light underbelly as well. Plus, it's got an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Here's a similar T-Rex of the same size, but with totally different coloring, and actually, this one is a hybrid T-Rex because it has spines that pop out of its back, just like that. Next up is a Carcharodontosaurus figure. This figure is medium-sized, and it has one action button on its back to activate the chomping action. This is an Albertosaurus figure. It's got the dark green body with orange detailing, and you can use the tail to control the head and jaw on this figure. Here is a medium-sized Velociraptor figure. It's a lot bigger than many of the Velociraptor figures that I have, and I actually have a few other that are very similar to it as well. Check these out. They're all around the same size and have many of the same features. This one is a light tan with green stripes. This one's darker colored. And this one actually has some battle damage on its side that you can press. I believe this dinosaur is a Pachycephalosaurus. It's got a dark purple coloring with some detailing along the top and an action button with its tail for the headbutting. Next up, we've got a smaller Indominus Rex figure with battle damage on the side that you can open and close. That's pretty cool. Plus, you can use the tail to control the head on this figure too. Next up, I believe this is the Nasutoceratops figure. It's got the dark blue body with some different coloring all throughout. It's got those huge horns in the front and two action buttons. One to lift up its head and one to swing its tail. This is a huge Pteranodon figure. It's pretty basic because it can't do a whole lot, but it has some pretty cool coloring on the wings. You can move the wings up and down, as well as open and close the mouth. I've got another winged dinosaur here, but I'm actually not sure what type of dinosaur this is, so let me know in the comments below. This big dinosaur, I believe, is called an Amargosaurus. It's got two huge ridges on its neck that go all the way down its back to its tail, and it has two action buttons, one to operate the neck and one to operate the tail. Here's another huge Velociraptor figure. This one is actually Velociraptor Blue. It's got these stripes down its side, and you can move the arms, the legs, and the tail on this figure. This is the basic Scorpius Rex figure. It's got the poisonous quills on its tail, and you can move the arms and legs on this figure too. Next up is the Pentaceratops figure.
This figure is pretty close to a Triceratops, but it's got a huge frill on the front and a ton more horns too. You can use the action button to lift up its neck and to swing its torso around too. Here's a couple more medium-sized Velociraptor figures. This first one is a dark green with black stripes, and this other one is a lot brighter, and it actually has battle damage on its side as well. That's pretty cool. Plus, with this figure, you can use the tail to open and close the jaw. Here is a Triceratops figure with the clay red coloring and the brown on the top, and it's got one action button to lift up the head. This next figure, I believe, is the Spinosaurus. Also looks quite a bit like a Triceratops as well, but again, some big differences in the front. And with this figure, you can use the tail to control the head. Next up is the giant Quetzalcoatlus dinosaur. This winged dinosaur is from the new Jurassic World Dominion movie and has a few action buttons on it. The first action button you can press to flap its wings, and the second button activates its jaw. Here's a Dimetrodon figure with the light blue-gray coloring on the sides and the giant red spine on top. Check out these smaller dinosaurs. I think these are both called Proceratops. We've got one with the purple coloring and a little bit of yellow. The other one is light green with also some yellow coloring as well. This is a dark green and light green Sauropelta with those huge spikes coming out of its back. Here is a smaller carnivore dinosaur. This is a Herrerasaurus, and it's got an action button with its tail that opens and closes its jaw. Here is a Styracosaurus figure. It's got those two super bright circles right on the front and tons of horns around its head too. Here is the Shringosaurus figure. It's pretty odd looking. It's got the yellow body with the brown detailing on top and a super long neck and some horns at the very top. This is the Miragaia figure. It's got a dark body with some lighter coloring in the back and those two giant horns sticking out of its back too. Here's a smaller Triceratops figure with battle damage right on the side that you can open and close. This is a Stygimoloch figure with the dark brown coloring on the sides and some darker detailing along the top, plus an action button to activate the headbutting action. This is a Parasaurolophus figure. This is a newer one, I think from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the light tan body with some darker detailing right along the top. Here's another Pachycephalosaurus figure with a light tan body and the darker coloring along the top, and the action button on its tail to activate the headbutting. This is a baby Brachiosaurus figure. You can move the neck up and down as well as move the legs and open and close the jaw too. And here are two Gallimimus figures, one with a dark green coloring and one with the light tan and brown coloring along the top. We've got one more bin to go, but before we do, let's check out these brand new ones that I just bought, including this giant Dreadnoughtus figure. Let's open this one up first. Alright, here is the Dreadnoughtus fully assembled. It's actually really hard to show even the whole thing on camera because it is so long. This neck is a lot longer than a Brachiosaurus, I think. Let's check out the head first. You can open and close its mouth. And you can move the neck back and forth. See that swivel right there? You can adjust the legs. And you can even move the tail back and forth too. This figure is ginormous, and it has some pretty cool coloring along the top and the sides as well. This next figure, I think, is pronounced the Rugops Primus figure. It's from the Ferocious Pack of Jurassic World Dominion. This is a pretty cool looking figure. It's got the dark green body with the black tail and the black detailing around its head. And you can move the legs, the arms, the neck, and the head as well. Next up is the Jurassic World Herrerasaurus figure. This figure has a lighter green body with some teal blue coloring along the top, while its face is that dark green color too. You can open and close the jaws manually, and you can move all the other limbs as well. Next is the Jurassic World Legacy Collection, Dr. Ian Malcolm.
Here is Dr. Ian Malcolm with his fiery torch, and it also came with this small dinosaur. I can't remember the name of this dinosaur, but it's a pretty cool set. And next, we've got the Camp Cretaceous Soundstrike Pteranodon. All right, let's unfold those wings. This is a pretty big dinosaur. It's probably a foot long from wingtip to wingtip, and it's got a few action buttons as well. The first one you can press to flap its wings and get some sound effects. And the second button activates its jaw. Now let's dig into this second bin. First off, we've got an Indominus Rex figure. This figure is huge and has the classic gray coloring that you can see in the movies. Over here is another Pteranodon figure, but this one I believe is from the Amber collection. So it's got rubbery wings and a whole lot more detail too. This is another huge Spinosaurus figure. This one has the green body with the light underbelly, but it's still got the red spine and the red detailing around its face too. In the back here, we've got a T-Rex figure with the camouflage coloring. That's pretty cool. And this T-Rex has two actions. You can pull up on its tail for a chomping action, or you can pull down on the tail for a roaring action. Here is a T-Rex figure from the first Jurassic World movie. It's got a rubbery tail and a chomping action when you lift up its body. Here's another T-Rex figure with the gray and brown coloring on its body. It's very adjustable with its neck and its legs and its arms, and there's the button at the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This is a Carcharodontosaurus figure with the blue coloring on the sides and the brighter detailing along its back. And it's got an action button on its back for the chomping. Next is a Stegosaurus figure with the gray-blue body and the lighter underbelly. And this figure has an action button that when you press down right here, it swings its tail back and forth. Watch out for those spikes. This is an Allosaurus figure with a slide lever action on the top, so you can get a bunch of different sound effects and different roaring poses too. Here is a Suchomimus figure with the blue body and the yellow detailing along the top. And this figure has one action button for the chomping. Here's one of my favorite dinosaurs, the Carnotaurus. This figure has the red coloring on the side and the dark purple on top with an action button to activate the jaw and the neck. This, I believe, is another Sinoceratops figure. It's got the light green body with some yellow detailing on its tail and on the front as well. And when you press down on the back of this figure, it lifts its head up. This is another Allosaurus figure with different coloring. It's got the gray body with the yellow detailing. You can move all of its limbs, and it has an action button on its back to activate the jaw. This is a Ceratosaurus figure with the gray coloring on the bottom and some brown and red all the way up to the top of its face. Here is one of my largest Endoraptor figures. This figure has a few different actions. First, there's a button on its tail to activate the arms. You can use the tail to swivel the torso around, and there's a button on the bottom of the tail to activate the jaw. Next up, we've got a huge Dilophosaurus figure with the bright red coloring and the even brighter frills in the front. This is a pretty basic figure though, so you can't do too much with it. You can move the arms and legs and the tail a little bit. Here is the Iguanodon figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the light tan body with some lighter striping along the top, and when you press down on this Iguanodon, it lifts its head up and down. Next up is a Cryolophosaurus figure. This figure has some darker coloring along its body. It's also got some brighter red detailing all the way up to the crown on the top of its head. And you can use the tail to swing the neck back and forth too. Way over here, I believe this dinosaur is called the Kentrosaurus. It looks kind of like a Stegosaurus, but it's got these huge spikes coming out of its side. And this figure has a slide lever action on its back to swing those spikes back and forth. Here is a Triceratops figure in the brown and blue coloring. Plus, you can use the tail on this dinosaur to control the neck. All right, we've got a Baryonyx figure in here. This one has the light brown and the dark gray-blue coloring. And there's an action button on its back to activate its jaws.
We've got another Baryonyx figure in here, but this one is super bright. It's got the bright green coloring along its side and bottom, and the brown along the top, plus that action button to activate its jaw too. Here's a pretty rare dinosaur. This is the Edmontosaurus. It's got some pretty cool coloring along its body, and you can use the tail to control the neck. Next up, we've got a Velociraptor from the Amber collection. This one is the bright orange and brown Velociraptor, and it is super posable. Here is an older Ankylosaurus figure. This one is actually a hybrid, and it has special armor plating that you can take on and off. Plus, it has an action button that when you move this leg, it swings its tail back and forth and moves its head too. I've got a few mini T-Rex figures in here. These are also older figures from the first Jurassic World movie. They're both pretty identical, but with different coloring, and they both have the action where you can move its jaw and its neck by moving the tail around. Looks like I've got some more Velociraptor figures in here. Check out this one. This one is dark blue, but it has the yellow and gold coloring along the top of its head. I've also got these green Velociraptors too. This one is in the sneaking pose, and this one has some really cool detailing along the top of its body. These two figures are both Dilophosaurus figures. This one is the newer figure and is a bit smaller, but it does have an action button on its tail to activate the frills and open the jaw in the front, which is pretty cool. And this older Dilophosaurus figure, I believe from the first Jurassic World movie, it's a bit bigger, has battle damage on the side, and you can use the tail to move its neck. Here's another Stegosaurus figure. This one has the brown, tan, and green coloring, and it also has an action button that when you press down right here, it swings its tail back and forth. Looks like I've got 3 more Ankylosaurus figures, all with different coloring. This first one is brown and has the green and gray coloring on the top, plus with an action button to swing its tail. This next Ankylosaurus has the clay red underside with the tan and brown on top. And this third Ankylosaurus has the yellow coloring on the bottom with the green and gray on top, and a slide lever action to swing the tail back and forth. Here is another Dilophosaurus figure from the first Jurassic World movie, and this figure is super bright. Plus, it has the action on its tail to move its neck up and down. Here's another giant Stegosaurus figure. This one has a softer green-blue coloring, and it has the action button that you press down to swing its tail back and forth. Here's another Stegosaurus figure, but this one has the gray, brown, tan, and green coloring all over its body. And this one actually has 2 action buttons. The first one moves its head up and down, and the second one swings the tail back and forth. This is a Parasaurolophus figure with the light yellow coloring and the brown stripes, and it's got 2 action buttons. The first moves its head up and down, and the second swings its tail back and forth. We've got some more Velociraptor and Atrociraptor figures in here. First, we've got another Velociraptor blue figure. We've also got this purple and red Velociraptor. And we've got 2 Atrociraptor figures as well. We've got one that's tan and in the crawling pose, and we've got a bright orange-red one with the white striping. Next up, we've got a Sauropelta figure in the clay red color that can swing back and forth, so you better watch out for those spikes. We've also got this Moros Intrepidus figure with the light green coloring and the orange on its tail too. Here's another small Indominus Rex figure. This one also has the battle damage on its side, and you can use the tail to control its jaw and its neck too. This is another Stygimoloch figure. This one does not have any action buttons, but you can move its legs, its arms, and its head around too. And here is also another baby Brachiosaurus figure. This one, though, has the gray and purple coloring right along the top. And last of all is this Herrerasaurus figure with the dark blue coloring and the lighter detailing on its back and all the way up to its head, too. Welcome to the Amazing Dinosaurs channel. Today, I'm going to show you 100 Jurassic World dinosaur figures, so let's dig in. Let's start with this bin on the right. The very first one is a battle damage T-Rex with the orange body and the brown top. This T-Rex is dark green in color. It's got some black detailing along its back, and it's got the button at the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This is the Tyrannosaurus from the Dominion series. It's got the green body with brown detailing and the orange crown on the top of its head. Here we've got another T-Rex with the soft brown body and the darker brown along the top, and of course the button on the top of its head for chomping and roaring. This Dominion figure is a Spinosaurus. It's got a dark body with the red spine and the red head. Up next, we've got a T-Rex figure, but this is actually a hybrid T-Rex. You can tell because it has spines that pop out of its back by pressing this button, and the jaw opens and closes as well. Here is another T-Rex figure, but this is a gray-brown T-Rex. It's got some darker brown along the top. It's very adjustable, and you can open and close the mouth too. Way back here is a camouflage T-Rex. It's got some sound effects too. You can open and close the mouth, and you can do a chomping effect too. This is a Sarcophagus. It's got some short legs, but it's got the blue body with purple and orange detailing on the top. This super bright dinosaur is another T-Rex. It is custom colored, so it is a bright red. It's got some orange and black as well. Over here is a Scorpius Rex that I'm sure you recognize from the Jurassic World movie. It has two action buttons, one for the jaw and one for the arms. Next up, we've got a Tarbosaurus figure. This is gray and a darker gray. It's got those huge spikes along its spine, and it's got the red chin and neck too. This is a Siatsmicararum. It's got the orange body with the blue detailing on its back and head, and it's got some gray detailing along the back of its body. Back here is a Carcharodontosaurus with the blue body and the brown and orange detailing along its back, all the way up to around its eyes. Here is a Rajasaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It has a dark body with some lighter coloring along its neck, and it has an action button for chomping. Next up, we've got an old Indominus Rex figure. This one is smaller. It's got some battle damage on the side that you can open and close, and you can use the tail to chomp the mouth. Here is a super bright dinosaur. This is the Suchomimus. It's got a bright yellow body with the brown detailing along its spine, and it has two action buttons. One for the jaws, and one to swing the tail. Here is another bright dinosaur. This is a Metriacanthosaurus. It's got the bright red body with some brown detailing on its back and some orange on its head. Here's another Metriacanthus figure. This has a yellow body with some green coloring along the top, and it has the action button on its back for the jaw. This is a super cool looking Allosaurus figure. It's got the gray body with the yellow detailing all over. It's got some awesome looking red right above its eyes, and it's got an action button for the jaw. Right over here is the Majingasaurus with a green, yellow, and blue body, and you can use the tail to control the neck. Here is a Cryolophosaurus figure. This has a bright yellow body with brown detailing and orange along the top of its body. Here's another small Indominus Rex figure. This has battle damage on the side that you can't open or close, but you can still use the tail to open and close the mouth. Next up is the Irritator. This has a brown, blue, and light blue body, and you can use the tail to control the neck. I've got a Baryonyx figure here with a brown, blue, and orange coloring on its body, and it's got an action button on its back for the jaw. Next up is another Allosaurus figure. This one has a brown and blue body, and it has a slide lever action to control the jaw. This Jurassic World figure is a Baryonyx. It's got the gray, white, and blue detailing on its body, and it has the slide lever action to control the jaw too. Next up, I've got the Jurassic World Hammond Collection Parasaurolophus. This figure is a light tan color. It's got some bright orange running all the way down its back, and of course, it's got the iconic horn at the top of its head. Here is another Hammond Collection figure. This is the Baryonyx. It is super adjustable and posable, and it's got some pretty cool detailing all along its body. This is a basic Spinosaurus figure. It's got the dark green body with some white detailing, and of course the red along its spine and all around its eyes. Here is the Ceratosaurus figure in the dark green coloring with black detailing on the top and the slide lever action to control the jaw. Here is another Ceratosaurus figure, but this one is in the brown and orange coloring, and it's got a button at the top of its back to control the jaw. Next up, we've got the Extreme Chompin' Carnotaurus. This is a little figure, but it has a huge head, and it has a button to control the eyes, and a button for chomping too. This figure is from the Amber collection. I believe this one is Velociraptor Tiger. As you can tell, it's got the stripes all over its body with the orange, making it a pretty bright dinosaur. I've got a few Dimetrodon figures in here too. This first one is a light blue with a red spine. I've also got this green Dimetrodon with an even brighter red spine. Here is a small Carnotaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. Next up, I've got a few Monolophosaurus figures. This first one is a soft green color with darker detailing, and this other figure is a brown Monolophosaurus with gray detailing on its body. Here is a baby Brachiosaurus in the light green color. Got a couple horned small dinosaurs here. This first one is the Zuniceratops. It's got some bright coloring on the side of its body, and this one is the battle-damaged Triceratops. I've got a few small Dilophosaurus figures in here as well. This first one is brown, blue, and white, especially on the front. And this other one is a soft green, and it's got some orange, red, and yellow on its body. This is the battle-damaged Coelurus figure. You can see that you can press this button on its back to activate the battle damage on the side. Let's see what else I got. I've got another Monolophosaurus figure. This one is a bright green color. It's got some red on the front. And this is a Herrerasaurus. It is a gray-blue color with the white detailing along the top of its body. Of course, I've got a few Velociraptor figures in here in this first bin. This first one is a green color. It has a button on its back to activate the arms. And this second Velociraptor figure has its legs spring-loaded, so you can actually launch it into the air. And the last one's in this first bin. We still have one more bin to go. I've got a handful of herbivore figures. This first figure is a Minmi in the green coloring. I've also got a Sauropelta in the red and gray coloring with the huge spikes. Here is Ankylosaurus Bumpy from Camp Cretaceous. And can you guess the name of this herbivore dinosaur? Let me know down in the comments below. Now it's time for this second bin that will complete my 100 Jurassic World dinosaur figure haul. And I've actually got some brand new ones that we're gonna open up before we get into the bin. This first one is the Proceratosaurus figure. Alright, so this figure is mostly red. It's got some yellow detailing along the top of its back and neck. And it's got some lime green eyes too. It's pretty cool. Next up is the Jurassic World Velociraptor figure. This Velociraptor is orange in color. It's got some brown detailing along the top, and it's got those bright yellow eyes. Next up is the Jurassic World Atrociraptor figure. This Atrociraptor figure is the white and brown one that I'm sure you recognize from the movie, and it's got those evil-looking red eyes. And next up, we've got the Jurassic World Pyroraptor. I'm sure you recognize this figure from the Jurassic World Dominion movie as well. It's got a black and red body, and it's got those yellow-orange eyes too. Here we've got the small Sound Surge Giganotosaurus. It still has the green coloring with the black detailing along the top, and it comes with some sound effects. Here is another Giganotosaurus figure, but a whole lot larger. Still has the same coloring with a bit more detail with the black, I think. And it's got two actions. The first is for swinging the torso back and forth. And the second is for the jaws. This is a Spinosaurus figure that is dark green in color, just like the one we saw earlier, and it has the red detailing along its spine and all over its head too. Next up, we've got a Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. It is tan in color and it has a button on its back to activate the jaw. Here we've got another Dinosaurus figure. We saw one earlier that had totally different coloring. This one is tan in color and it's got brown and orange detailing all along its back up to its head. This is a giant Indominus Rex figure with extreme battle damage on the side that you can turn on and off by pressing a button. I've got another Indominus Rex figure here. This one does not have the battle damage on the side, but instead the button activates the claws for slashing. Here's one of my coolest Spinosaurus figures. It has the most intricate detailing and coloring out of all of my Spinosaurus figures. It's got some blue on the spine, its eyes are a bright green color, and of course it's got the button at the top of its head for opening and closing the jaw. Here's another Sarcophagus figure. This one is green on the sides and belly and clay red along the top. Next up is an Allosaurus figure. This one is dark green with white and red detailing along its back and neck. And it's got the slide lever action to activate the jaw and sound effects. This is the Endoraptor. This figure actually has two actions. The first is on its tail. When you press that, it swings its arms shut. It's also got a button on the bottom of its tail to activate the jaw. And you can use the tail to swing the torso around too. This is a Megaraptor figure from the new Jurassic World Dominion movie. It's got some huge claws in the front and it's got a red and blue body. Down here we've got a Stegosaurus figure that is gray-blue and it has some darker detailing along the top. And it has an action button to activate the tail for swinging back and forth. Here is another Scorpius Rex figure, but this is the basic edition, so you can't open and close the jaw, but you can still move the arms, the legs, and the tail. Back here is the Ankylosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got a bright clay red body with the brown detailing on top, and you can use the tail to control the neck and the jaws too. I believe this dinosaur is called an Amargosaurus. It's got the brown body with black detailing and the red all along its neck down to its tail too. And it's got two action buttons, one to activate the neck and one to activate the tail. This is a big Velociraptor blue figure. You can see the iconic blue all the way down its back and of course the yellow eyes too. Here we've got another Allosaurus figure. This one is tan, dark blue, and bright blue, and it has two action buttons, one for the jaw and one for the arms. Here is a large Dilophosaurus figure. It has a battle damage button on the side, and it's got some super bright colors all over. It's got green, yellow, orange, and it's got some brown detailing all along its body too. If I remember correctly, this is an Iguanodon figure. It's got some detailing of tan and darker brown along the top, and it has an action button that moves its head up and down. This is a hybrid Triceratops Stegosaurus. It's got some battle damage on the side, and its entire body is super bright. It's got blue, it's got dark blue, and it's got a bunch of gold all over its body too. This is a Suchomimus in the dark blue color with the yellow detailing along its spine, and it's got one action button to activate the jaw. I've got another large Velociraptor figure in here. This one is the orange color, and this actually might be the same one that I opened up earlier on. It's got the brown detailing on top and the yellow eyes too. This figure, I believe, is the Proceratosaurus. It's got a tan body with gray detailing and the red nose and orange eyes. Here we've got another Stegosaurus figure. This one is in a light blue-green color. It's got darker detailing along the top, and of course it's got the action button for swinging the tail back and forth. This is a Triceratops figure. It's got the clay red coloring with the brown detailing, and it's got an action button on its back to move the head up and down. This is a small Spinosaurus figure, and it is super brightly colored with the blue and red along its spine. It's also got some battle damage, and you can use the tail to move the head around too. I've got two small T-Rex figures in here. This first one though is actually a hybrid T-Rex, a hybrid with a Dilophosaurus, and it's got this super bright orange and gold all over its body. And this second smaller T-Rex figure is green with the battle damage on the side, and you can use the tail to control the mouth just like the other one. Our second to last dinosaur is a hybrid Stegosaurus Triceratops. This one is brown in color, it's got some yellow detailing on its legs, and it's got the battle damage on the side. And our final dinosaur of the 100 Jurassic World dinosaur figures is the Nasutoceratops. With the dark blue body, it's got the green legs and the red detailing along the top. Welcome back. Today we're checking out a huge collection of 50 Jurassic World dinosaurs from Jurassic World Dominion, Camp Cretaceous, and a lot more. Let's start with the biggest figure in this entire bin. This is the Apatosaurus figure. This figure is ginormous. It's very similar to a Brachiosaurus. It's got the long neck, but it has a totally different face and a much stockier body, I think. But the figure itself is pretty cool because you can move all the legs, you can swivel the tail back and forth, you can move the neck back and forth too, and there's a surprising amount of detail on its face. You can even open and close its mouth too. This thing is ginormous. Next up, I believe released as part of the first Jurassic World movie, is this hybrid Indominus Rex figure. It's got the bright red coloring, it's got some special features, can pop out those spines, its jaw opens and closes, and as you can hear, there's tons of sound effects too. Way over here from Jurassic World Dominion, we've got an extreme battle damaged Tyrannosaurus Rex. This figure is darker than a lot of the T-Rex figures that I have, and of course, it's got the battle damaged slashes right on its side that you can open and close to hide completely or to show. That's really cool. Here is another giant T-Rex figure. This one might be from Camp Cretaceous, but I can't quite remember. But this one is a dark green coloring, which I love. It's got some black striping along the top, and it's got the action button on the top of its head to activate the jaw. Over here, we've got a Tarbosaurus figure. This figure has tons of spikes running down all the way down its spine to its tail. It's got a dark gray body with some red right underneath its neck and chin, and it's got some action features as well. It can open and close the jaw and move the neck. This, I believe, is the Parasaurolophus figure. It's got some really cool pink reflective coloring, which is a pretty special feature. You can move all of its limbs, and you can use its tail to move its head up and down, and in all directions. Over here, we've got another Parasaurolophus figure, but I think that this one is from the Amber collection or the Hammond collection. I actually can't remember. But it's got some pretty cool coloring and striping along its body. This figure is very poseable. You can even bend at the elbows and at the knees and at the ankles, which you can't do with a lot of Jurassic World figures, so that's pretty cool. Next up is the purple, orange, and blue Sarcosuchus figure. This dinosaur spends a lot of its time in the water. It looks a bit like an alligator actually, and it's got some awesome spikes running along its back, and it has some action features that you can use the tail to move the head around and open and close the ginormous jaw. Here we've got an Ankylosaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. Comes with sound effects as you can hear, and when you press down on its back, it actually swings its tail back and forth. This is the new Triceratops figure from the Hammond collection. It's got a whole lot more detailing along its skin, which is pretty cool. The coloring is a little bit varied along its body, but the best part is that there are many points of articulation. You can move all of its limbs in all sorts of directions, and I love the detailing on the face too. It's really cool. Here is the Sound Surge Carnotaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. It's got the all red body, and of course, the sound effects. Next up is the basic Spinosaurus figure in the dark green coloring with the red spine. You can move the legs and arms and tail, but you can't open and close the jaw on this figure. Here is the Camp Cretaceous Scorpius Rex figure. This one is a bit smaller
than the other Scorpius Rex figure that I have. It's got a green body with some black detailing along the top, and you can move all of its limbs as well, even open and close the jaw. Here is a T-Rex figure from the first Jurassic World movie, and this one was actually custom painted. So you won't see this one much around, but it's got the red body with the black stripes and spots, and the yellow eyes, and an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Right here, we've got the Seats Microrerum figure. This is a pretty unique figure. I love how the teeth fit into the jaw perfectly. See that big tooth right there and how it fits in perfect? That is super cool. Plus, it's got tons of spikes along its neck and its back, and you can use the tail to control the neck and the jaw too. Way in the back here, we've got the Carcharodontosaurus figure in the tan, brown, and orange coloring. It's got some little spikes running up its head all the way to its tail, and it's got an action button on its back to activate the chomping action. Here is the Yangchuanosaurus from Jurassic World Dominion. So this is a newer figure. It's got the green body with brown detailing, and you can actually move its whole body quite a bit. You can move its torso up and down, and you can use the tail to control the head too. Right here from the first Jurassic World movie is the miniature Mosasaurus figure with battle damage on the side. That is really cool. I have quite a few giant Mosasaurus figures, but this one is still really cool and decently detailed as well. Watch out, we've got another Tyrannosaurus Rex figure. This one also has the battle damage on both sides of its body that you can turn on and off. Plus, the rest of its body is very poseable as well. Next up is the Cryolophosaurus figure. I think this one might be from Camp Cretaceous, but I can't remember. But anyways, you can move the tail to move the head up and down, and you can move all the limbs and open and close the jaw too. Here's a couple more figures from the first Jurassic World movie. So these figures are pretty old. These are both miniature Spinosaurus figures. They both have the battle damage on the side. This one is more wildly colored, and this one's a bit more realistic. Next up, I've got a giant Dilophosaurus figure in the red coloring with these super bright frills and crown in the front. That is really cool. Here is a Pachycephalosaurus figure with the green and brown coloring and the battle damage that you can open and close on the side. This figure is from Jurassic World Dominion. It is the Rajasaurus with the dark blue coloring and the white on its neck and chin as well. Plus, it's got some spikes right along the top of its neck. And with this figure, when you press down on its back, it has a chomping action. This is another Scorpius Rex figure, but this is the basic edition, so you can't open and close the jaw, but you can still move the arms, the legs, and the tail around, and it has some pretty cool coloring and detailing along its body. Looks like I've got another Cryolophosaurus figure in here. This one is bright yellow with brown and orange detailing along its head, and just like the other figure, you can open and close the mouth, and you can use the tail to swing the neck around. Oh, look at this. I've actually got another Rajasaurus figure too, also with different coloring. This one is light brown with the dark blue coloring along its back and neck. And just like the other Rajasaurus, you can press down on its back for the chomping action. This is the Albertosaurus figurine with battle damage on its side. Check it out. You can see its stomach, then you can even close the ribs, and then you can even close the skin to hide it all. That is really cool. Plus, it's got some battle damage on its leg as well, and the rest of its body is pretty adjustable too. So this is a pretty awesome figure. This, I believe, is a Sinoceratops from the new Jurassic World Dominion movie. It's got a bright yellow tail with a green body, and its eyes are all black, which is really cool. With this figure, you can press down on its body for the roaring action. Next up, I've actually got some brand new figures that we're gonna open up on camera here. The first is this Funko Pop Giganotosaurus figure. So this Giganotosaurus figure comes on a clear stand. It's got some interesting coloring. It's a lot different than the Mattel Giganotosaurus figures that I have. It's got the light gray coloring on the underside, this gray-blue coloring all along the top, so it's not very green like many of the other figures. And it's got these huge yellow eyes without pupils, which is interesting. Plus, you can see a little bit of battle damage some slashes and scrapes here and there, all along its body too. And we've also got the Dino Rivals Dual Attack Triceratops. This Triceratops is a light gray color. It's got some darker detailing along the top. And as the name says, it has 2 action buttons. The first is for the horn slashing or roaring action. And there's a second button for the tail whipping too. Whips its tail back and forth. It's pretty cool. Here we've got a similar dinosaur. This one I believe is a Spinosaurus. It's got the green and tan coloring with the tan underbelly and a little bit of orange on its frill in the front too. And this figure has 1 action button on its back to activate moving the head up and down. Next up, we've got a smaller figure. I actually don't remember the species of this dinosaur, so let me know down in the comments if you recognize what type of dinosaur this is. It's got an action button on its back to move its head back and forth. I've also got a few mini figures right here, both with different coloring. This first one is a greenish color. It's got some interesting detailing along its body, and the other one is red with white spikes, which is really cool. I think this one is definitely my more favorite one. Next up is the Spinosaurus figure, pretty similar to a Triceratops. It's got those 2 horns in the front, but it does not have the 3rd horn, and it's got some different coloring as well. Over here, we've got a baby T-Rex figure. It's got the light green body with some darker green detailing, and it's got an action that you can use to open and close its jaw. This is a Carnotaurus figure from Jurassic World Dominion. It's a lot smaller than most of the Carnotaurus figures, but it's got some pretty cool coloring, very different from the other Carnotaurus figures, and it's still quite posable as well. Here's an interesting looking dinosaur. I believe this one is a Spinosaurus or something like that. I can't quite remember, but the most interesting part is it's got spikes, little spikes on its shoulders and huge spikes on its tail. That's pretty cool. Right over here, I've got a battle damage Coelurus figure that you can actually turn the battle damage on and off, just like the giant T-Rexes that we saw earlier. That's pretty cool. Here is a baby Brachiosaurus figure in the light green and dark green coloring, and it is pretty adjustable as well. You can move the neck, the legs, and the mouth as well. Right over here, this, I believe, is a Stygimoloch figure, and it has an action that when you move the tail, it has the headbutting action. I've got a few Velociraptor figures in here as well. This first one is the spring-loaded version, so you can actually have it jump into the air because its legs are spring-loaded. I've also got one, I believe, from the Amber collection, so it's a lot more detailed and a lot more articulate with its limbs, so you can move its arms and its legs quite a bit more. And I've also got this third Velociraptor figure with some pretty cool blue coloring. It's pretty unique with its coloring, and it's got an action button on its back to move its claws up and down. These next figures are Herrerasaurus dinosaurs. They both look pretty identical except from the coloring. This one is a light blue-gray coloring, and this one is green with brown on the top, and this one actually has battle damage that you can open and close on the side. And for the final figures, we've got Dr. Ian Malcolm, and we've got a Dracorex figure with all these spikes on its head. Plus, you can move its neck up and down, and its arms and legs as well.
Today, I'm going to be showing you my collection of dinosaur figures from the historical Jurassic period, plus some bonus vintage figures at the very bottom. I've even got some brand new ones over here. Let's get started with the first species from the Jurassic period, the Allosaurus. Now, this figure is actually from the Jurassic World Dominion movie, so it is a very new figure, and it's even got some battle damage on the side that you can open up to show the stomach. You can close the ribs, and then you can even close the skin too to hide it completely. Plus, it's got an action button on its back to activate the jaw. Our next Allosaurus figure is a bit smaller, but it has similar coloring. This one is a light brown with dark blue on the top. It's It's got the spikes along its head, and it has a slide lever action, so you can get a bunch of different sound effects and different poses with its jaw. Our next Allosaurus is even brighter colored. This one is a light tan color and has 2 different tones of blue along its body. All its limbs are movable. This one actually has 2 buttons on its back. The first activates its jaw for chomping and roaring, and the second button on its back activates its arms for slashing. So you can actually operate both of them at the same time. Next up, for the Jurassic period, we've got some Ceratosaurus figures. This first one is a brown color with some orange detailing along the top. It's got some pretty good detailing with the skin and the texturing, which I really like. And it has an action button on its back to operate the jaw. It's even got some sound effects too. Our next Ceratosaurus is differently colored. This one is gray, dark blue, and red, and this figure also has the slide lever action, so you can get a bunch of different sound effects and a bunch of different poses with the mouth. Here is another Ceratosaurus figure, and this one is probably the brightest of them all. It has a bright yellow side and underbelly. It's got the black detailing and the red that goes all the way up to its face. It's also got the horn right at the tip of its nose, just like the other figures, and it has an action button on its back to activate its jaw. Let's see, what species should we do next? Oh, you know what? Why don't we do the brand new sets that I have? Let's go ahead and open up this Hammond collection, Dr. Alan Grant. So this set comes with quite a few different pieces. First, you've got the actual figure itself, then you've got a torch, you've got a different face with a different facial expression, got some hands, and you've also got a tiny dinosaur. Now this figure is extremely posable, just like a real life human. You can bend the knees, you can move the ankles around, and as you can see with this figure's face, currently Dr. Alan Grant is wearing some nice shades. Let's go ahead and put this giant torch in his hand. And also this baby dinosaur. It might be a raptor, it might be a T-Rex. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think it fits in his hand. Let's see. Now, Dr. Alan Grant is ready for more exploring. The next brand new figure that I'm adding to my collection is Robert Muldoon from Jurassic Park. I'm sure you recognize this character. Now this figure is a lot larger than the Hammond collection figure that we just saw, and it comes with a hat, it comes with another face. You can see that his eyes are a bit wider in this face. He's also got a shock baton and some extra hands as well. Let's take a look at the actual figure. This figure is probably twice the size of the Dr. Alan Grant figure that we saw. And I gotta say, I think I like this one more. This one has even more points of articulation and a lot more detail. You can even see its name tag. It's even got a watch on his wrist. So yeah, I think this figure is my favorite of the two. This is super cool, and this is a very long shock baton too. All right, moving on to our next species for the Jurassic period haul. This is the Stegosaurus. It's got the light blue-green body with the darker top and the lighter underbelly, and it's got an action that swings the tail back and forth. So check out those huge spikes on its tail. Here's another Stegosaurus figure with totally different coloring. This one has the brown, tan, and green coloring, and some more brown right along the top as well. And with this figure, its whole body swivels back and forth. So when you use the action lever, it swings with even more power, which is super cool. And the next species, this isn't a Stegosaurus, but it is a close relative. This is the Kentrosaurus, and it's got these huge spikes coming out right behind its front legs. The rest of the body looks pretty similar to a Stegosaurus, except for the back, you've got even more huge spikes on its tail and on its back as well. Plus, this figure has a slide lever action used to swing the front torso back and forth. So you better watch out for these huge spikes if you're gonna fight this dinosaur. And the next species from the Jurassic period is the Cryolophosaurus figure. This one is dark blue with the red detailing along the top and a tail that you can use to move its head around. This second Cryolophosaurus figure is very similar. It's got many of the same functions, but is a bright yellow color with brown on the top. And of course, you can use the tail to move the head around in a very lifelike way. The next species for the Jurassic period is the Brachiosaurus. This figure isn't made by Mattel. I can't remember what brand made this one, but it's got a much softer body than you'd expect, so you can actually bend it a little bit. It's got the super long neck, the light underbelly with the green on top. And let's not forget about this ginormous Brachiosaurus in the back here. This figure is huge. It's like one of my super colossal figures. And you can move the front legs and the back legs. You can move the tail around back and forth. And the best part is you can move the neck up and down as well as side to side, which is really cool. Plus, you can even open and close its mouth manually too. So they've got some nice detail on its head up here. And the next species is the Dilophosaurus. I've got some mini Dilophosaurus figures right here, each with their own unique coloring. They've both got the bright yellow frills though, which is really cool. Let's move on to my bonus vintage Jurassic Park figures. I've actually got a Dilophosaurus figure, which is JP02. So this species was actually alive during the Jurassic period as well. You'll notice that it has no frills on its front though, which is pretty cool. Here is another vintage figure that also happens to be from the Jurassic period. This is the Stegosaurus. JP24. It's got the huge battle damage on its side, and it actually has an action feature that when you press right here, it swings its tail back and forth. And its tail is all made of rubber, aside from the spikes, which are harder plastic. Next from my vintage collection is a Parasaurolophus. This is JP19, and this figure actually has an action button on its back as well, used for running. I really like, despite how old this figure is, the detailing and the coloring has still stood up really well. Next up is a big figure. I believe that this one is a Utah Raptor. Just like many of the other vintage figures that I have, most of its body is a soft rubber, so it is getting old and quite fragile. But it still has some pretty great coloring, and it's got some awesome pink eyes. Over here, we've got a Baryonyx figure, totally different from the new Baryonyx figures that Mattel is releasing. This figure also has an action that when you move its leg back and forth, it twists its head back and forth. And finally, from the vintage bonus figures, we've got a baby T-Rex with a broken leg feature. You can see that there's a connective wire inside so you can wiggle its leg back and forth. That's really cool. Want to see more dino videos? Click the subscribe button now.